Elliot Tepper from Carleton University is with us every Wednesday on Ottawa Today to talk about the big international stories, and we have two that we are going to focus on today. Good morning, Elliot.
Good morning, Mark.
Nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
And the two that we're going to focus on, of course, are the French election and Donald Trump's 100 days. I think is it this weekend?
Saturday and Sunday. Saturdays.
Yeah. Depends on whether you count it.
And Sunday, yes.
Yeah, I tried to do the math the other day, and it came down to whether or not you count January 20th as his first day,
correct,
or if you count January 21st as his first day because inauguration was on the 20th. Is,
will the government of the United States shut down exactly on his 100th day or the day before his 100th day?
Exactly.
That's quite a 100-day marker.
Yeah. So let's talk first about the French elections, and obviously much has been said about them already since the first round of voting on Sunday, leading to the May 7th vote, which will feature Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen. Yep. But I'm interested in your analysis on exactly what's going on in France that's leading to this outcome. And one of the thoughts that I have about this, there are a lot of people who are looking at the polls, which is always dangerous to do, but in this case, the polls overwhelmingly show Macron as the favorite. Yes. They're not. It's not a thing of he's ahead by 2 or 4% where it could flip the other way. Of course, anything can happen. The votes have not been cast. They've not been counted. But it looks like he's going to win. And there are people who are already sort of kind of looking at that as, okay, well, that's the end of the populist movement.
And how long that is.
Yeah, to me, the fact that Marine Le Pen has even made it to the second ballot, it's not like at the end of this, if she loses, that her supporters or even Marine Le Pen herself are going to say, well, I guess that's over. No, it's going to keep going. Well,
the big picture here is that somehow the election of Donald Trump and the Brexit phenomenon and the populist wave, which is right-wing populist wave, except in France we also had a left-wing populist as well running. We can come to that. But all of that is, you and I talked about this, I think the day Donald Trump was firmly announced as being elected, the change in the zeitgeist, the change in the atmosphere of what's permissible, the future isn't what it used to be. The notion that the Europe that we have seen in front of us is the Europe that will be there, all of that is gone, and the populist wave has certainly impacted this. What was at stake in this election, to come to France in particular, was to be kind of dramatic about it. Really, this is a contest for the soul of France and for the fate of Europe, because, and we'll take them on both sides, the soul of France. You can't get a more stark choice between visions for the future than the French electorate has now chosen out of the Final Four. I guess that basketball thing comes to mind, the Final Four. The Final Four parties out of the 11 that were running were almost in a statistical dead heat.
Yeah.
Any of the combinations could have come out of it, but the polls, and this is worth underlining at the start, the polls were correct in this case, even though it was a tight race.
Yeah, it ended up being 23 to 21 to 20 to 20, basically.
Yes, and almost 1 million votes between the top two candidates. So the soul of France is really to be decided now by the electorate, and it's the starkest choice you can get. The National Front is a party that has clearly fascist roots. We keep reading about the neo-Nazi advisors that are closest to Marine Le Pen, although she is trying to move her party to the center. And she did something very dramatic in order to say that, no, I'm not the party of the past. I'm really an acceptable party. I'm not a fringe party. And that was when she announced that she's not going to be, for the moment, the president of her party. She's running to be president of all of France. She's trying to shake up this race, which she's trailing badly in, but she's done very well. So the visions of the future for France are in the hands of the French voters. Macron is positive and sunny, sunny ways. He's talking about a strong France inside a strong Europe. She's talking about close the borders. The Muslims are a threat. We're not going to let anybody in. And it's France for the French, which is an ethno-nationalist appeal. And when I said the zeitgeist has changed, what we're hearing are echoes of the vocabulary of the 1930s coming out of Europe and coming out of this election. So the French now have made their choice of which two candidates, and now they have to decide really what is France all about. Her message is potent. It's powerful. I am the only patriot in this race. I'm the only one who loves France in this race. I will keep you safe. I will bring the borders back. I will bring back the franc. I will get us out of the EU after negotiations and a referendum. So this is a stark contrast to Macron, and therefore the fate of Europe. The European project, Mark, which has brought us 70 years of peace and prosperity out of that war zone which engulfs the world with their conflicts inside Europe. First World War, you just had the Governor General on talking about Vimy. A horrible war started out of that cockpit in Europe, and then the Second World War and the Holocaust and everything that came of that. And the transformation has been remarkable and miraculous. All of that's in question. So the fate of Europe is in question, and certainly the soul of France.
Emmanuel Macron is an interesting figure. I just looked it up. Napoleon Bonaparte was 35. I think he was actually 34, about to turn 35, when he became Emperor of France.
Crowned himself Emperor of France.
Macron would be the youngest head of state of France since Napoleon. If he's elected, he's younger than Justin Trudeau. He's not even 40 yet. He's 39.
Yes. So you should take heart, Mark. I'm sure you're in the same generation.
I'm older than both of them.
Aren't we all? I think the characters involved, the individuals involved, Marine Le Pen, but also Mélenchon, with the far left candidate who was a Trotskyite, but who had modern technology appearing by hologram in 6 cities and master of
that was
social
weird.
media.
That was weird, the holograms.
But this is, keep in mind, we had there a candidate of the far left. Left-wing populism was there. Bernie Sanders, advisor on how to use social media, was advising that candidate.
Right.
So now we have a situation where this young man, keep in mind in terms of comparing ages, you have to go back, what was the expected life expectancy at the time of Napoleon, even for a non-soldier.
Sure, but I guess what it does say is he is the youngest. Yes. He's going to be the youngest head of state in 200 years. So, indeed. I mean, that covers a lot of time when the life expectancy was longer, too.
Assuming he gets it. So we have an interesting situation here. You and I talked during the long Trump campaign about some rules, some guidelines for what to watch for. And one of them is the party, each party leader will now try to expand their own base and suppress the base of the opposition. Marine Le Pen is losing to this youngster. She needed to shake up the race, so she has said, okay, now I'm running not as a candidate for... So she is trying to suppress his base by saying he's not a true Frenchman. He doesn't believe in France. He doesn't love France. I love France. And she's reaching out to those voters who possibly... Let's talk about her voting base. She won overwhelmingly in the youth vote because of high youth unemployment, and she also won in what for France would pass as the Rust Belt. She wants to expand her base to sop up a bit of that left-wing populism, whatever fraction would come to her as a right-wing populist. But she's up mainly, I think, after the person who came in third in that ballot, François Fillon, who was arguably the logical leader here until turned out he was putting his family on the payroll, and it was a scandal. Yeah. But he didn't quit, and he came within an eyelash of still taking it into the final 2. The rural countryside is her target now as she tries to expand her base. But one of the things we also talked about, and this comes to Macron, is that organization beats disorganization every time. Macron has no political party. 1 year ago, April, he left the government. He's never been elected to anything before. He's not a politician in the traditional sense. And he is profiting by saying, you want a populist who's an outsider? Well, I'm an outsider, even though, in fact, I went to school with all the leaders. Right. And I'm being smeared by my opponent, Marine, as being a Rothschild banker, which is dog whistle anti-Semitic politics in France. So that's why the choice is so clear. Can he translate a movement, which is what he's leading, into a political apparatus that can get the votes in the next election? But not only the next election of May 7th, but in June comes the parliamentary election.
Right.
He doesn't have a political party. Can she sop up the remnants of Fillon and an actual political party? And she's got a party, and National Front has governing in parts of France, and she's a member of all things of the European Parliament, which she wants to get out of. So can an organization be put in place? There's a lot riding on this election, and we're quite correct to be watching it.
All right. François Fillon, by the way, basically was undermined by what was called Penelope Gate. That's the name of his Penelope wife. Is the name of his wife, because there were allegations that he had paid his wife and children from the public payroll to do basically nothing. Right. So that's what cost him maybe a chance of being on the second ballot in this election.
He was under strong pressure to withdraw from the race.
Right.
And have another leader of the traditional party.
Yeah.
He was heading the party, the only remaining party of the traditional center-left, center-right parties. And that's what the message we started out today. What about the populist wave?
Yeah. And I guess that's what I conclude from this is that even if Le Pen doesn't win, I look at this and still see it as an overwhelming change, because it's an outsider that's going to win. It's an unusual choice. It's not one of the traditional parties. So that sense of let's throw out the traditional people in politics is continuing no matter what the outcome is.
That's correct. And I think the people who have said, look, now we can all breathe easily, because remember the Dutch had a candidate that was a threat, and oh no, the Dutch put their finger in the dike and stopped it. Now it's been stopped in France. No, this wave is continuing.
Work that way.
It may have crested, but it's certainly continuing, and the zeitgeist still is there. Will Europe now be able to get back on track for a European project, or will populism undermine it?
Donald Trump's 100 days coming up next with Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. Elliot Tepper is here from Carleton University every Wednesday on Ottawa Today, and we talk about the big international stories. We spoke a moment ago about the French elections. There are British elections coming up, of course, in June, and in the meantime, we look back now, 96, 97 days ago at Donald Trump's inauguration. And he was the guy who, through the campaign, talked a lot about the first 100 days. In a recent interview, he said, that's not that important. It's just an arbitrary milestone, which by and large is true. But it is a time when we can kind of pause and say, okay, what's he done in the first 100 days?
I think I'll argue on the one hand, on the other hand, being a political scientist. So on the one hand, I think you can argue, as everybody is arguing, except possibly us today, that this has been a major failure. He had a particular checklist of things he's going to do in his first 100 days. He didn't do any of them. There's not a single legislative success in 100 days. All this is compared to, the original 100 days was FDR, and he saved the world with the New Deal, and Obama had to do the same with the Great Recession. So it's been shambolic. He had the major promise was Obamacare, and the Republicans couldn't get their act together. It was a humiliating defeat. This is a shambolic rollout. His immigration plans. So I'm going to stop Muslims. No, not Muslims, but certain countries. The courts have said, I see through you on that. It's still a Muslim ban, and it's still unconstitutional. So all of that has been stymied. And meanwhile, it looks like they're chaotic. They can't get their act together. They don't really have a strategy, and they control everything. The House, the Senate, and the presidency are all Republican, and yet this is a awkward, I think the term shambolic, which is not a real word, shambolic comes to mind to describe it. On the other hand, Mark, I think you can argue it's been a success. And all of the commentary so far is it's a failure. The success is this is the era, as you and I have discussed over and over again, of the Republican Party ascendancy. The Republican agenda is moving forward, first and foremost in regard to the Supreme Court. That was pushed through. It was a great cost because the norms of the Senate requiring really bipartisanship when it comes to appointments to the highest court in the land, that's been overridden now. So to get a 51 vote instead of 60 vote, they put their man on. But this fulfills a major promise why many people voted Republican and for Donald Trump, including evangelicals who have no reason to think they have a natural affinity with Donald Trump and vice versa. His familiarity with the Bible seems to be scant. Nevertheless, he said, I'm going to put on somebody on that court, provided to me from a list by the Federalist. There's an NGO, in effect, but it's far right. And they put on a candidate highly credentialed. The court is going to be a Republican court, possibly two more appointments for the indefinite future, for generations. So big success there. But beyond that, all these executive orders that are being signed are meaningful. Some of them are just for show. But let's start right off the top with one that's totally forgotten but absolutely crucial for Canada. Actually, the first thing he did was cancel the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Say that 3 times fast. He took America and therefore Canada out of what was overtly an anti-China trade pact. He saw it only in trade terms. It clearly was geopolitical. All the states of Southeast Asia and around the Pacific gathered under American leadership and froze out China. America withdrew. This was a green light for China to say, okay, I'm going to pick up all those pieces. China emerges as a world leader because of the invitation. But beyond that, there are many executive orders in the works to weaken the EPA. All of the agenda that Republicans like are being carried out by executive order, not yet by legislation. Oh, yeah, they have to do something about Obamacare. The big things coming are taxes, and the reason Obamacare repeal didn't work is because it was actually a sneaky tax benefit for the rich, and they couldn't sell it. So tax reform is coming. There's an immediate challenge coming. The government may shut down on the 99th or the 100th day of the presidency, but it won't, because he took off the table what was going to sink it, which was, I'm putting money in to build my wall, and, oh no, I'll take that off the table. Now the government won't shut down. It'll be a success. The point is, the Republican ascendancy is changing America in significant ways and in ways that the Republicans like. You've been quoting the polls on this. We have some polling data that shows that 96% of Republicans still like what the Republicans are doing. Only 2% would say we're sorry we voted for Donald Trump.
And I would say, I guess, that the only way that you can determine Donald Trump's first 100 days were a failure is if you judge him by the kind of political criteria that no longer apply in American politics because Donald Trump won the election. I think there is a constituency of Americans, a significant number of them, who want to see somebody like Donald Trump in the White House, even if he's not succeeding on every score. It's not about what he gets done, but what he says. It's about the image that it portrays to have an outsider in the White House. Those things still matter to those people 4 months after the election, even if Donald Trump is not ticking every single box on his list of promises.
He's still there. He got elected, and he fulfilled on the Supreme Court. All of his rhetoric, well, hey, this affects Canada. He goes to Wisconsin and says, Wisconsin, remember, you folks are the ones that shockingly put me in the White House. Wisconsin was supposed to go for Hillary. They voted for him. He's now repaying the favor. He's saying, I'm going to slap Canada around because I'm paying my debt to the people who brought me here. They read that inside America as this is a man who keeps his promises. He's going to bring jobs to us. Now, there's a lot of nitty-gritty coming. Really, this is going to raise the cost of lumber to home builders in America. But the politics of this are that this shambolic opening of the Trump presidency can be considered by those who brought him there a success.
Elliot, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Indeed. Let's see what the week brings.